Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to today's webinar on financing safely managed sanitation. Apologies for a slightly late start. We were sorting out some technical difficulties. Welcome. I see there are more participants joining, so maybe we just give it another 30 seconds so that people can finish joining the webinar before we start. All right, maybe we can get started. Welcome again, everyone, to today's webinar on financing safely managed sanitation. Um, Great that you could join us. Maya, maybe you could go to the next slide, please. So just a few items of housekeeping. If you could all keep your microphones turned off, except for in the final discussion and Q&A. Please use the chat for questions and comments. These will be addressed at the end of the webinar or later by email. If you can ensure to keep your questions relevant to the topic of the webinar, it would be much appreciated. If you have any technical issues, feel free to ask for assistance in the chat. And of course, we will be recording the webinar, and the recording and the slides will be shared with the attendees following the webinar. You should be able to switch languages for the interpretation. You should have an interpretation icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. I think we are still trying to sort out the interpretation, if I'm not mistaken, but we are meant to have French-English interpretation for the webinar this morning, and in the afternoon webinar, we will have Spanish English interpretation. So once we have sorted out the interpretation issues, you should see an interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you should be able to select your language. So please hold on, give us a couple minutes to sort out the interpretation issue. And hopefully we will get that working quickly. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of the session this morning. So we have the opening and background on this webinar series, which will be given by my WaterAid colleague, Maya Igarashi-Wood, who is the sanitation lead at WaterAid. We will have an overview presentation on the sanitation financing landscape by Khairul Islam, Regional Director, South Asia from WaterAid. We will be presenting a couple of practical examples of technical tools and resources and their applications. First, from the Niger Wash Accounts, Maman Ibro, who is the Wash Accounts focal point and the Director of Statistics in the Ministère de l'Hydraulique of Niger. And secondly, from Debjoti Mukherjee on the African Urban Sanitation Investment Initiative from the African Development Bank. And then we will have closing from BC Agbaremi from UNICEF. Next slide, please. So without further ado, I will hand over the floor to Maya for the opening to the webinar and a little bit of background on this webinar series. Over to you, Maya.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for some of you, perhaps. My name is Maya Igarashi-Wood, sanitation lead at the WaterAid. So at the start of the webinar, I'd like to give you a little bit of a background of why the steps to safely manage sanitation matter. So we all know that progress on sanitation needs to accelerate dramatically. But to make that happen, we need stronger alignment and coordination across the sector. At the same time, there are still major gaps in understanding. For example, what does safely managed sanitation really means in different contexts, in different countries? How do we integrate it into national policies, regulations, standards, and also how to implement it on the ground? And how do we ensure sanitation services are also climate resilient? That's where this process-oriented framework comes in. It helps countries to turn global strategies into action, strategy like those shown on this screen, the WHO Sanitation and Health Guideline, UNICEF Game Plan, respective organizational strategies, and also very recently produced Green Climate Fund guidance on climate resilient sanitation, supported by multiple partners in the sector. This common approach isn't just about better planning, it is about better collaboration. By working together and aligning efforts, we can create real impact at country level. So quickly, let's look at overview of this framework. The steps to safely manage sanitation framework provides 8 practical steps to help guide national and subnational efforts. 3 of these are process steps. Step 1, assessing the situation and building a common understanding of what safely managed sanitation means. Step 2, developing an action plan based on that understanding. And step 8, recognizing that this is an iterative process. This reminds us that continuous learning and adaptation are essential, and then monitor the progress. The remaining steps between steps 3 to 7, these are focused on system strengthening elements, including policy regulations, financing, data and monitoring, service delivery, and human resource capacity strengthening. This framework, again, to reiterate, isn't about reinventing the wheel, but instead it acts as a practical checklist to help navigate existing guidelines and tools more effectively. At each step, a set of guiding questions are written in the document, and they help identify gaps and determine what immediate and long-term actions are needed. Ultimately, this approach supports country teams to work together, no matter which organization you're coming from, to define common goals as a sector and implement government-led roadmap and strategies in a coordinated manner across partners. So this framework ideas were introduced at the FAST Global Summit held in Nepal last year. It's brought together country delegations from over 25 countries, creating a space for rich discussion on their progress toward SDG 6.2. Hosted by WHO, UNICEF, WaterAid, but also with technical support from other partners. Delegations share their experience on good practices, as well as common and context-specific challenges, and at the end, developed an action plan to move forward. While the exchange was really valuable, the learning was limited to those present in the room, because it was purely in-person summit. So if you'd like to see and then the feel, the energy of the summit, please check the videos with the link on the slide. But we knew that keeping this momentum alive and expanding it to a wider sector globally would be crucial for accelerating the progress. So that's why we are here today. Today we are focusing on financing, which is the second topic in this 6 SMS webinar series. If you missed the first session on policy and regulations, you can find it on the Susanna website. And don't forget to sign up for the upcoming sessions. We'd love to have you on this learning journey together. Over to you, Marina-san. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maya, for the opening and for this introduction to the webinar series. And apologies, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Marina Takane from the Water Sanitation, Hygiene and Health Unit at WHO headquarters in Geneva. And I'm very pleased to be with you here today for this webinar. So and I see that people are introducing themselves in the chat. That's great. If you can continue to do that, as well as to, be sure to enter any questions that you may have in the chat so that we can come back to them at the end of the webinar in the Q&A session. And I see also that the interpretation should now be working. So you should have an interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So please select your language in order to hear the interpretation for the webinar this morning. So maybe we can start with a quick poll. So the question is, what is the biggest barrier to sanitation financing in your country or region? So I'm about to launch the poll, but if you could already start thinking of your answer. So option 1 is lack of government funding. Second option is low private sector interest. Third option, poor financial planning. Fourth option, limited donor engagement. Fifth option, weak policies and governance. So please go ahead and respond to this poll. I think you are allowed to select multiple responses. So I see that people are already responding. So I will give people a couple of minutes to enter their response, and then we can see the results. So we have already 40 people, a bit over 40 people who have responded, but we do have 71 participants in the webinar. So let's just give people another couple of, well, maybe another 15 seconds to get their responses in, and then we can move on. Great. I see the responses are still coming in, but they're slowing down. So in the interest of time, I think I will end the poll. I'll give you another 3 seconds in case you want to get in a last response. But we do see sort of a variety of responses here. So we do see lack of government funding coming in quite high at 62%. And we see as well weak policies and governance in second place at 53%. And we have poor financial planning at 47%. But you know, quite a few of the responses getting a high percentage here. So I think there are a number of barriers and sort of a confluence of factors coming in as barriers to sanitation financing, which I think is in line with what we have, what we see in various countries. And hopefully we can get some further insight into this in the overview presentation. Next slide, please. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over the floor to Khairul Islam, the Regional Director, South Asia for WaterAid, who will be giving to us an overview of the sanitation financing landscape. Over to you, Khairul.
Thank you so much. I will be talking about financing safely managed sanitation, and I will definitely try to limit it within few maximum 10 minutes, I would say. Next slide, please. Yeah. So, what we gradually realize is that open defecation or basic sanitation is not enough for human development as well as a human rights. And the way we would like to graduate ourselves is to promote it to safely managed sanitation, because the containment of the feces at the household level is not enough for the environment, and there are multiple implications of it, which I don't want to elaborate in this gathering because all of you know about all those implications. But the realization we gradually need to understand that safely managed sanitation is essential. It's not a luxury anymore. Second, it has to be seen as a public goods. Unless we see it as a public goods, we will never realize, and the state party will never get into that. And if it is not that, then many of the risk, which on the right side of the screen you are seeing the interlinked lot of issues, starting from inequality to number of things, geopolitical, economic instability, the erosion of GDP, a number of things will gradually happen. But the amount of investment what is needed in context of the changing landscape of the aid environment or overseas support that are usually we used to see is gradually declining. So we need to think it in a little different way than the way we are used to. Next slide, please. Uh, the estimates, I mean, I know that at different country level, at different project level, district level, sub-district level, we have done this in number of ways. But globally, if we see that we will be needing, $140 billion each year, not until the total SDG period, we will be needing that. And this is really challenging, and challenging especially for Saharan Africa and South Asia. Next slide, please. Uh, Now, I mean, we need to understand, and interestingly, I mean, just a few months ago in Bangladesh, we did in a sub-district context where we could very specifically calculate cost of each and every village, each and every uh, options that we develop for. And most importantly, this sub-district was chosen in a climate vulnerable coastal belt in Bangladesh. What we found is that in comparison to the basic sanitation, if we graduate ourselves to safely managed sanitation, the kind of investment will be more or less 4 times. And if we want to make it sustainable. So this is where you can see this graph is a graph which is actually stepping. And if you look into that for basic sanitation, what can be covered in $21 billion, and for the maintenance, which we usually ignore. I mean, this is another area which we need to really, I mean, be attentive that in a life cycle costing approach, the operation and maintenance cost and the ultimate capital investment cost. In fact, if we compare those two, the operational maintenance cost at the end of the life cycle will be higher than the capital cost. We often forget that, and most of the national government don't keep adequate budget for the operation and maintenance. And if we look into, I mean, the total cost of safely managed sanitation, especially for sub-Saharan Africa, will be quite an enormous, which is 40% of the total cost of achieving safely managed sanitation only in sub-Saharan Africa. Next slide, please. Now, what would be the challenging in mobilizing such an amount of resources? I was personally very fortunate to listen a few years ago, and the two World Bank president and the UN Secretary General were together in this stage in Bangladesh, and they were saying in a very broad stroke terms that look, in order to attain SDG, the amount of investment we need, a major portion, meaning that at least 1/3 to 40% needs to come from the government and development partners. But rest has to come from the private sector as well as from the household itself. Now, what we don't emphasize much on the private sector and other kind of investment, meaning the commercial sector. The government sector, what it is supposed to do, usually what happens is that because of the low prioritization of sanitation in the overall political agenda, except the brightest example of India, which I will come towards the end, we don't see that sanitation is a part of politics. It can win or help win a election. When politicians will realize, then they will only make it sanitation as a political priority. And the complacence that many of the countries by doing, open defecation free country is having a complacence that, oh, we have done enough in sanitation. So the low political prioritization in sanitation is one of the main challenges. And the other two are attracting the alternate financing and most importantly, attracting the commercial sectors with a bankable project so that the investment bank and the commercial private sector can come and invest in running those sanitation facilities beyond the household, where the household is paying for its own self-supply or own sanitation cost. Next slide, please. And in order to mobilize resources, the kind of role we play is mostly the influencing role. And in that influencing and support role, what we usually lack is clear data and to convince the politician why they would make it a priority. We lack the data and convincing rationale that why it should be declared public good, considered as public good, why should be a political agenda. Simultaneously, we don't actually bring along good quality data and evidences that would convince the politicians. And the other thing for sustainability is the poorly designed or improper tariff setting that we are doing in different countries, which actually causes for a risk for the sustainability issue. Next slide, please. Now, recent example I just mentioned that if you look into India, where they make sanitation first and then water. So the Swachh Bharat mission, which is Clean India campaign, or in other words, in order to celebrate 150th centenary of Mahatma Gandhi, the way they have cleaned up the entire country from open defecation and enhanced toilet access to a substantial improvement kind of level over a period of 5 years, that required $26 billion, and mostly, except a very insignificant, small portion from the World Bank, most of these actually came from internal resources. If politician becomes convinced and make it a part of politics, and evidences suggest that in the election it played a role. So realizing that now the government is actually doing the Jal Jeevan mission, meaning that every household should have a pipe water connection, which exactly fits with the definition of SDG 2. So, 6.2. So this is how, when politicians make it a political agenda, water and sanitation, that becomes sustainable and substantive improvement and can come. Next slide, please. So I'm towards the end of my presentation. So what we can do is, there are a few low-hanging fruits, there are a few areas that we really need to work upon for long period of time. In quick wins, one of our data or that we need to really collect is national wash accounts, because that's the thing which gives us the weapon to understand why water sanitation and hygiene should be a political agenda, why the poorest income people or lowest income people, quintile people, will be investing more disproportionately than their richer counterpart. So inequity in a system is becomes evident. What portion of GDP gets invested into what? All those things, and if we invest, what would be the benefit? Those are the things actually can be calculated from the wash accounts. And based on that, if we can organize a high-level national meeting, develop a costed plan, and this is what I mean. We did it in small scale in Bangladesh in one sub-district, that a costed action plan clearly shows us how much money it would require to achieve safely managed sanitation, even which are climate resilient. And in longer term action, the kind of thing we do, like the sanitation budget, but simultaneously with the enhancement of the budget, we need to enhance our capacity and the capabilities so that we can utilize those budget. At the end of the year, budget doesn't get, and the quality of the budget really becomes much better. It's pilfer proof. It doesn't erode it into corruption and all those kind of things. And we need to keep track that it gets equally distributed and equity remains in a country. Next slide, if there is any. Yeah. So these are the resources which, when you will get it, I mean, you will be getting it, and then you can consult those. So the summary message I would like to give is that national wash accounts and financing, based on that, we can really make it a political agenda. That would be the aim for all wash actors in a country. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Khairul, for that overview of sanitation financing. And I just wanted to highlight in terms of opportunities, I think the Green Climate Fund Annex is, maybe going forward, an opportunity to be looked into further, and just climate financing more broadly. And Khairul also mentioned the wash accounts, and some of you may be quite familiar with the wash accounts, some of you may be less familiar. But we do, in fact, have, as one of the practical examples of technical tools and resources and their application, we have our colleague Maman Ibro from Niger, who will be presenting on the Niger wash accounts, followed by Debjoti Mukherjee from the African Development Bank, who will be talking about the African Urban Sanitation Investment Initiative. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the floor to Maman, who will be talking to us about the Niger wash accounts experience. And just a reminder for those of you who need the interpretation, there's the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and please select your language. So Maman, je vous passe la parole.
Thank you. Good morning. Wish you all welcome. My name is Maman. I'm a director of statistics at the Unit of Sanitation and Hydraulics in Niger. I also led the wash accounts in the year 2021 and 22. I'm pleased to present on behalf of Niger. To start with my predecessors, we understood the need for the country to adopt the wash account methodology in order to understand the expenditures made in the water sector, but also to mobilize funds to fund the sector. And so that is the methodology that we need to adopt in order to achieve wash accounts. I will start with the situation of the country by presenting the evaluation, the progress of the various indicators per year. So the issue of today is about sanitation, and on the sanitation indicators are not in a good shape, if I can put it this way. And the same holds true for the optimal access services. For that reason, we have an open defecation rate which is very high in Niger. What we want to do is to reduce this rate and make sure that the other access rates that are optimal can increase. In Niger, we want to improve the access rates of the households since this rate is very low as I'm talking to you. As part of wash accounts, when you look at this table, I don't see the slide. Yes, here we are. Under wash accounts Niger, I can present the situation of the year 2021 and the year 2022. We have seen that the sanitation indicators are very low, and even when it comes to funding, we don't have many donors who are funding sanitation every year. So in short, we understand that, yes, the users themselves are funding, and which is amounting to 1.77%, and we have NGOs and bilateral donors. In 2021, neither the national authorities, neither the local authorities made an effort to fund sanitation. However, in 2022, some funds were actually provided by the national authorities. And in summary of this table, it should be noted that it's the bilateral and multilateral donors who are funding the most in the sanitation sector, either in 2021 or 2022. Hence the need to make advocacy for the government itself to actually show more interest in this sector and provide funding for that purpose. Next slide. The same situation goes on here, and you can have an idea. In 2021 and 2022, the the water supply service is higher compared to hygiene services and sanitation. And hygiene services rate is high because of the efforts made by the household themselves. And of course, it's much more higher than the sanitation services in the households, either pastoral or static households. So this is what we can say. Now, about the forecast of our sectoral program, we have a program called PROSEHA, which means water, sanitation, and hygiene. After achievements have been made under wash accounts, we can see the status of spendings made and the gaps that remains to be offset for water, for pastoral hydraulics, and sanitation. As for sanitation and hygiene, we have a gap of 92%. That is huge compared to the gap on water and hydraulic, pastoral hydraulic, which is 75% and 37% respectively, and 63% respectively. For 2021 and 22, we see that the sanitation sector is still lagging behind, and initiatives have to be undertaken to fast track the implementation of the SDGs regarding this issue. Next slide, please. This is a status of the expenditures made in billions of CFA francs. We have the organizations, the NGOs, the governments, the bilateral and multilateral donors. Either in 2021 or 2022, we see that there is progress in the funding from provided by the government and users, and as far as the donors are concerned, the funding has decreased in 2022. However, we notice that the users contribute a lot to funding the sector's funding, mostly on the water sector and sanitation, hygiene and sanitation sectors. And we therefore need to propose solutions in order to keep up and reach the objective, targeted objective in the sector. Next slide. I don't see the slide. Now, when it comes to the commitments made by the government, the share of sanitation compared to the GDP, we can say that in 2021, the national authorities have contributed to funding the sector. That's why we have this rate of 0.54%. In 2022, we were at 0.48%. In 2021, multilateral donors have contributed a lot. In 2022, these donors have decreased. That is why we have not reached the same percentage of 21. When we consider the forecasts made by the government for sanitation, and on the basis of the investment made by the government or to be made by the government in the sanitation and hygiene sector, if we had to rely on that, we wouldn't have reached this rate. It's thanks to the contribution of the NGOs, the multilateral and bilateral donors that we have reached. We have gone this far. So the expenditures are there in billions CFA francs. Now, when it comes to the new prospects, in order to boost the sanitation and hygiene indicators, we think that establishing a self-funding system will help. And under wash accounts, we say that we should accelerate the establishment of the water fund. It's about the polluter pays system or mechanism so that we can have more money and direct this money to the investments. Much money is also to be found at the delegated management. So we have lots of funds in the accounts, but we found it difficult to use these funds because the law have not provided for the way these funds should be used in order to invest. So the government is thinking about passing new laws so that the money in the various rural funds deriving from selling of water can be used for more investments and sanitation, investment on water and sanitation. We also have Fika sledge stations. So we are working to install those stations in all the villages. And if those stations are able to operate, they can generate funds that will help fund sanitation related activities. We also have the sanitation marketing that we should improve, especially at the rural level, so that it can actually raise the interest of the various stakeholders to commit in working for the sector. Now, when it comes to recommendations and challenges, we find that the national budget, the money directed to the sector from the national budget is very, very, very low. And few expenditures are made on hygiene, and the fragmentation of interventions in the sector makes it difficult to provide monitoring services. But we are creating data collection strategies in order to mobilize all the stakeholders and make them show interest in the wash accounts so that we can actually achieve the year N+1 of the accounting exercise. Those who are conversant with expenditures procedures may understand this. We have what we call the mobility of the experts, financial experts, and of course, this is impactful. And we also have the poor collection of data, wash data collection in the schools. We have not been able to collect data from institutional wash in the schools, in the health centers. We have issues regarding financial disaggregation, and we are thinking about the best strategies in order to attract more funding for that sector. In terms of forecasts, we are going to inform the stakeholders on the financial mobilization for the sector, prepare a strategy to accelerate the implementation of the wash accounts policies, and we should encourage the stakeholders to better use the existing funds and also use the other funds that are not accessible because of the law. And all this will be made through awareness raising with the policymakers and during financial reviews. I think this is the end of my presentation. Thank you. Marina, I think this slide brings my presentation to the end. Thank you.
Super formidable. Merci. Thank you, Maman, for that excellent presentation of the wash accounts. And congratulations to the Niger wash accounts team. They really did an excellent job. And I think Niger is also an excellent example of how well the wash account can work, especially when there's a strong partnership and collaboration between partners. So thank you, Maman, for that presentation. Now I'm going to hand the floor to Deb to present on the African Urban Sanitation Investment Initiative. Go ahead, Deb.
Thank you, Marina. And I also thank to my earlier speakers who presented such very pertinent and information as well as references. Good morning and good afternoon, based on wherever you are. My name is Debjyoti Mukherjee. I work for the African Water Facility. It's a part of African Development Bank. African Water Facility is the project preparation facility of the Water and Sanitation Development Department of the bank. Next slide, please. And in 2024, we operationalize this Aussie window. Before that, I just want to give a very quick overview of some recent information, and most of these are well known to most of us. So this is the gap of 800 million, and urban population is growing at a very rapid rate. And we took some of the figures from the Sanitation and Hygiene Fund, what they have completed in 2023. And you can see there is a scope for circular economy in the sanitation in Africa, and how the sanitation market is going to grow in the coming years. There are 5 country examples are there: Niger, Uganda, Kenya, Benin, and Sierra Leone. So we can see there is a high potential to grow for these. Next slide, please. So these Africa Urban Sanitation Investment Initiative, what I told that last year, 2024, in Stockholm, during the World Water Week, we launched these officially, and this is now operational. So the structure of these specific urban sanitation window is basically to provide support for the inclusive urban sanitation, and this is an investment vehicle of the African Water Facility, and to realize scalable and climate change sanitation. Its focus is CWIS, or you can say that inclusive urban sanitation, and this is a long-term setup that we are going to bring financing in the sector. Next slide, please. So, what market positioning and value proposition, or several round of iterations on that, and finally, this is the value proposition, and Aussie should play a catalytic role to increase investment. It should bring innovative financing and innovative business model with technologies. It should create scale and impact. And most importantly, it will position itself among all the sanitation stakeholders, particularly between the government, commercial, and development financing institutions. And Aussie is going to develop tailored financing or financial institutions to promote investment in the sector. And the aim is to work with the local partners and local financing institutions. Next slide, please. So these are the goals for the Aussie next 10 years. The target is to mobilize 320 million US dollar in the Aussie basket to develop 50 inclusive urban sanitation projects, to provide connectivity in 15 million to the 15 million population of the continent, and to mobilize downstream investment of 7 billion, and of course to bring to mobilize climate resilient or climate finance sources to the Aussie basket. Next slide, please. So Aussie is designed to cater the need of Africa, specifically what we discussed so far in this webinar, as well as what we know. Based on that, this structure has been created. So there is catalytic investment, and OSI is going to support the governance. That is, we are looking to fund studies, capacity building, and technical assistance for all these activities, mapping private sector and small and medium scale enterprises, to conduct diagnostics assessments and to generate pipeline for the OSI window as well as for other investors, uh, to develop priority upstream work, to prepare master plan and investment planning, to deploy result-based financing, technical assistance to structure project for financing and transactions, technical assistance to explore capital market for urban sanitation, and to deploy concessional and blended finance and guarantees. So OSI has a very strong focus in PPP. So you can see that the entire sanitation value chain we presented it, and this is a very known and very popular diagram. And these there is scope for RBA microfinance and portfolio lending and financing and financial institutions to come in, and we can compartmentalized these entire sanitation value chain in three different categories, where from household to the mid or large scale ticket size, we can go ahead with that. OSI is going to work with these all stakeholders. You can see that microfinance institutions, medium and small enterprises, private sector, commercial banks, development partners, and to provide risk capital, concessional loans, guarantees, and technical assistance. And of course, grants for preparation of projects and technical assistance. Next slide, please. So this is the very simple process of OSI window to access and to get the funds. There are two streams, as I said. There are grants, support, as well as there are concessional loans and guarantees. The grant support will go through the internal appraisal process once we receive the applications, and we will sign the grant after the appraisal and approval, and the project will be implemented, and we have a strong focus for downstream investment on the created project. The other part is that we receive applications. Sorry, go back to the last slide, please. Earlier slide. Yeah. So other part is the loan and concessional finance and guarantees. Here also we'll receive the applications and we'll create the OSI pipeline in consultation with the bank's NSO operations, and then co-financing, or from the OSI basket we will finance and we'll implement the project. Next slide, please. So we started the OSI grant function from 2024 and 2025. We are we approved project in 6 countries for 6 projects, and from 2026 we are going to start the financing operations of the OSI. And for this we started diagnostic studies in 12 countries. Just click for the map, please. And the diagnostic studies will be focusing at the legal and regulatory environment, policy environment, sanitation market size, political commitment, to understand the PPP framework, national development plans, and all these areas for the baseline information to take a proper or informed decision that where the OSI can be rolled on. And these after completion of these diagnostic studies in these 12 countries, we are going to generate about 40 to 50 priority projects that OSI is going to finance in the coming years. And these projects are going to generate about 1 to 1.5 billion investment in the urban sanitation. Next, please. That's it from my part. Thank you. It's quite quick.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you, Debjoti, for that rapid and excellent overview of Aussie. And apologies, I realize that we're running a little bit behind schedule due to our late start. And we do have, this questions and answers period that was planned. And I see that there are a couple of questions in the chat, which we can maybe quickly try to address. One question from Leslie about the focus on wash accounts to get to sort of a situation analysis, and the longer term focus on external funding and finance, but maybe a lack of focus on enabling environment reforms, which I think is it is correct. I think we are a little bit a victim of having to select topics to cover in this webinar, which is quite short. I think we had a much sort of broader overview of different aspects of finance in the Sanitation Summit last June. And of course, I think in the resources, you'll find a lot of materials on some of these enabling environment reforms, including tariff setting. So yes, but I think we are a little bit a victim of sort of the amount of time available for the webinar, which is quite short. But that is a very pertinent point that you raised, Leslie. I see also a question from Olufemi on enablers and predictors of progress. And I maybe will ask if we still have our presenters online, Khairul or Deb or Maman, if you can, if you can maybe raise one key enabler of progress in response to this question. I see Khairul, you've turned your video on. Would you want to raise one point?
Yeah, I mean, on enablers, I think I mentioned in my presentation, one is this political will and determination to turn the country. Because on safely managed sanitation, there are components which has to be invested by the government or development partners or state guaranteed credit from the bank investors or commercial sectors. So that would be one of the main enablers beyond which the commercial sector can come later to operation and maintenance. The second would be that since the operation and maintenance cost is higher than the capital cost over the time period of its lifespan, that needs to be factored in from the beginning. So these are the 2 points that I can see, because what we are seeing now for the inadequate operation and maintenance, a lot of those safely managed facilities, especially fecal sludge treatment plant and sewerage pipelines, these are becoming non-functional within 5 years of investment. So even big investment can be counterproductive if operation and maintenance are not there. So political will and regular O&M and adequate budget and investment, but most importantly, it's the political determination. That's what, in broad stroke, I'll be saying.
Super, thanks, Khairul. Deb, did you want to come in?
Just to add on what Khairul already mentioned, those very important issues. From the Aussie point of view, we are just now looking at master planning and investment planning of sanitation services. What we saw in from our initial missions to various countries, we see that the master plan is the basic requirement to have an investment plan. Once the investment plan is ready, then the next stages can be follow on with the concrete and steps. Thank you.
Super, thanks so much. I see that there were actually a couple of specific questions for you about Aussie in the chat. One was, is private sector eligible to apply for Aussie? And then the second one was a question from Gabrielle, who wanted to know how the 13 countries were able to obtain the financing for their projects, and who is the development partner that financed. I hope I translated that okay.
Okay. So quickly, since time is very limited, yes, of course, the private sector, now we are opening ourselves to the private sectors also, but there is certain criteria that the private sector investment or the or their business focus should be aligned with the national priority. That kind of endorsement we need to have. Standalone applications will be very difficult to approve from our side. So I suggest that any private sector, if anybody is present here, please discuss with your counterpart government, and endorse your application, and please apply for that. For private sector operations, will be open from 2026 with grant support as well as for the investment functions. And the second question, I'm not clear exactly what was the question, but we are conducting 12 countries diagnostic studies, and we are open to other countries also. And we are now taking applications from other countries also, if there is a priority and if there is a focused downstream investment for the upstream work. From 2026, I think we will be able to provide concessional and blended finance and guarantees. This month, we had a meeting with EDFI, European Development Financing Institutions in Brussels, just completed in 3 days or 4 days back. And we got a very huge response from the private sector investors in sanitation in Africa. So there is a huge scope, and opportunities are ahead. Thanks.
Super.
And I hope all partners should come and let's work together. Thanks.
Great, thanks so much. I see that this is generating a lot of interest, but unfortunately, in the interest of time, I think we're going to need to move on to the closing. So next slide, please. So I would like to invite BC Agbaremi from UNICEF to close this session for us. Over to you, BC.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then apology, colleagues, that we overshot our time slightly. Thank you so much. My name is BC Agbaremi. I work on sanitation. I'm based in New York, UNICEF. And I think basically I've really enjoyed this webinar. And I think webinar has been able to achieve its objective of creating awareness about the financing situation gap and highlighting the gap in financing safely managed sanitation and the need to explore investments, to increase access. I think this came out very strongly. I really need to come with excellent initiatives, mobilize actions, and to really make sure that we accelerate progress towards achieving safely managed sanitation, which is really lacking behind. And I think, again, we've learned quite a lot of lessons from countries in terms of some very excellent initiatives, and which can be further adapted to suit our local context. So I think there are pockets of examples here and there. So the ability to look at these examples and see how can I apply some of this in my local context. I think that's personally what we've learned. Of special interest, again, to convince that this is doable is the example from India. These mission-driven campaigns in India that have created a shift from business as usual, where huge amounts of domestic and external resources have been mobilized, to support sanitation. So all these examples are there for us to reflect upon, localize, contextualize, and use that to mobilize the required financing for sanitation in our various countries. And lastly, of course, we had excellent initiative of OSI, from African Development Bank. I think let's go and learn more about it and see how countries we can then package proposals to benefit from this. So I think there are quite a lot of examples. We have the climate finance, which again, we have some guidelines on it. So please, I think we have some tools. We've had some experiences. We've had some case studies. So let's refer to all these case studies and use that to further contextualize and see how we can really mobilize required financing. We need to increase investment for sanitation if you have to make progress. So I really want to thank you so much for taking part in this excellent webinar. And thanks to all our speakers. This has been a very nice one. I've learned quite a lot. I will close by just, again, talking about upcoming webinars. As you've heard from the beginning, these are a series of webinars. They are building on top of each other. They are complementing each other. So at the end of this series webinar, we have a total understanding of what is required, the 8 steps what's required to accelerate progress on sanitation. So the next webinar is on strengthening data systems for decision making. This is on 15th of April. So look out for the link. The link is going to be shared with us shortly. So please, let's try to attend. The webinar 4 is on scaling up self-delivery in rural settings. That's on the May 13th. Date to be confirmed. We have webinar 5 on scaling up self-delivery in urban settings on 27th of May. And then we have webinar 6 on human resource capacity for safely managed sanitation, which is for now has been scheduled for 17th of June. So these are webinars that, again, they are meant to enhance our capacity, share ideas, experiences to move the sanitation agenda forward in our various countries. So once again, thank you so much for your participation. And we hope to see you in the next series of webinars. So thanks so much and all the best. Have a nice day and bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Huge round of applause for everyone, to all of our presenters.
Thank you
thank
so
you for
much.
joining today.
Everyone, bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Khairul, so much for the presentation.